Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to use styles in Microsoft Word. And we're not just going to use it for the assignment that we happen to be using as our catalyst. We're going to talk about how to use it to shape any document in a consistent and easy to replicate fashion. And this is something that you could use in formatting a thesis, a doctoral dissertation, a journal article, a newsletter, uh, perhaps a submission for a magazine, or a book that you're submitting to a publisher. So let's go ahead and take a look here. And so we're going to be looking at this with the starting point. The catalyst for a discussion will be a specific assignment that comes up in the family communication course, COMO 376. But we're going to look at this assignment, what it's asking the writers to do. We're going to look at how you could do that in Microsoft Word, and we'll finish with a little bit about setting up the assignment. So recommend that you have a copy of our APA course paper template, but this will work regardless of what you are using as your starting Word document. So the base template that comes in Word, not a problem, because we'll be showing you how to customize things. So let's take a look at this assignment first. And if we just look at it at once, it seems a lot of information. But if we break this down, we find that it divides into a clear set of tasks. So first, we have this preamble of sorts, this purpose statement, that first line that says, oh, this is intended to help you as the writer to explore difficult conversations that might happen within a family in order to work on building your own constructive communication skills. If in the moment, one of the challenges is making a decision in a timely fashion about what to say and what not to say, this assignment is giving you a chance to plan out your response and plan out how you think other people would react in turn. Now, it asks you to write two separate family role play scenarios. They can be linked, but two separate scenarios, not one very long one. And so the first task is to select a topic that is part of your experience of a family. So it could be your family, it could be someone you know, it could be a fictional one you've read about, for example, from a series of books, it could be historical, or it could be from some media portrayal. And you're supposed to look at a experience with the family having a challenging family issue and to create two different family role plays where the family is addressing a difficult topic. Now, you need to have at least two family members involved in this, so no monologues, or no monologues taking over everything. It should be a back and forth. And you should have a narrator or observer who helps guide and explain what is happening in a scene. Now, your narrator could be a character, but it could also be the stage directions telling you what's going on. Now, that does say voiceover actor, so that could consist of the stage directions being read, or it could be a formal narrator character. Let's say that the narrator character just makes it very specifically clear that you're doing that thing. And we have a couple links for an example of dialogue and example formatting. Now, we have some specific instructions about roleplay number one, that it should have a identification. This is where the narrator comes in, where you identify the challenging topic that will be discussed, give an overview of the history of this topic as it's come out earlier, and in the family, and introduce the family members and their relationships to one another. Now, if you're writing this up in a Playscript, you might have a dramatis personae and a before the curtain goes up note. But in this case, it will be most direct if you just have the narrator say that. And we also have this task that have the family members engage in what you believe would be a typical discussion on this challenging topic and include some destructive, dysfunctional, or difficult communication behavior. It says make sure to have all family members participate. So this is all the family members that you're depicting in the scene, including reacting to what others are saying. So that's number one. Number two, so number one is destructive. Number two is going to be constructive. And so if the first one is dealing with introducing who these people are, you can have a follow-up, or you can do a whole new scene. But either way, we're addressing the same difficult topic, but in a more constructive topic. And if you have these particular we'll say archetypes of how people might react: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or stonewalling. Then in this case, you want to make sure that you are bringing those out in the dialogue, following up on the work that you've done in the previous week's assignment. And then this is going to wrap up with a presentation highlighting how the family members improved their initial communication strategies from the first role play. You'll probably find this easier if you just go ahead and have the narrator, if you're having a narrator, the narrator just say in summary what happened. And there are genres of theater where this happens, where you have a narrator either in a movie or in a play or musical, sometimes an opera, who give this sort of commentary and frame what's going on. Now, if we look at the rubric, it is basically saying, hey, do all the things that the instructions say to do. But I would like to call your attention to, again, that highlighting the improvements in the constructive communication versus the destructive. And remember, you can't count the narrator observer as one of the family members. We must have at least two other characters. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at what a script might look like. And so we're going to get into this by way of first understanding how to do a style in Word. And so we'll go back and forth between slides and some instructions and Word itself. Now, I've included for your reference some tutorials here that will allow you to view and to refer to instructions later at your convenience. Now, these are coming from the Microsoft.com portal, so those will always be there. And if you have a different version of Word, usually you can find by just searching for that title, like using styles or creating custom styles, you can find instructions for different versions of Word as well. So let's take a look at those instructions here. Now, I'm going to say that I'll be walking you through this. These are provided for reference in case you want to be looking at this on your own and playing around with it more separately. And so we have instructions here for the Windows and web version. It looks slightly different in the Mac version, but basic same ideas. And so our other link here, the creating custom styles, is current for all the latest versions of Word, and also happens to work in Outlook and a number of other programs as well. So these are the boring instructions. We're going to show you how to use this after we look at what we want this to be looking like. And so if we went to that link that references an example for how to format a screenplay, you'd see this. And this has the key elements that we want to focus on right now, which is to say, we want to know what styles we're going to create. So you'll see we have first, the character names are centered. That's, for example, we have Josh here, Azaria, those are centered on the page. The character names are also in all caps when they're listing it as speaking dialogue. Now, Mel here, Lizzie here, Josh, that's not capitalized because this is designed to draw your attention so you quickly see who's speaking and know if you're reading one of these characters when it's your turn. Now, we also have stage directions, which in this case we'll explain as a broad umbrella of things telling what happens and occasionally what people are thinking. That you can see we have a different margin. So if the dialogue is on this line here, when we have the stage directions over here. And so that's a leftward indentation compared to the dialogue. And we are keeping these character names and lines together so that we don't have, say, a name hanging out at the bottom of the page and then the following line separated. So these are some common rules for scripts. Now, you'll have some publishers that have their own convention about exactly where the character names are placed, whether they're indented half an inch or whether they're centered, but it's going to be the same basic process to create a style. So let's go ahead and we'll start out just by replicating some of the formatting that you see in this document. So All right, let's go ahead and head over to Microsoft Word. So I have created a blank Word document. This is nothing special. It is just the default template in Word. Now I can write in here some of the information that we had before. So we don't need all this information here. But we'll give it enough to give it an example. Now let's take a look back at our original document here. We see here that we have this different indentation. So let's start by that. Now you could manually format it, but then you'd have to do it every time that you had one of those lines. And there's a more efficient way. So in this case, let's go ahead and start with this text in relation. So what happened? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to here. We're on the home part of the ribbon. We're going to open up the styles pane. And so you have two ways to do it, one of which is to just format it the way you want. And so I'm going to use the indent tool to indent this 1/2 inch. And I'm going to say here, I'm going to use the button new style to create a new style based on what I have selected. And so I'm going to call this style dialogue. Now that style will now show up here, so I can click on that and apply it. And so here on this line of dialogue, I just have to click into it and then here select dialogue. Now I also want to have this name formatted in a particular way. So I'm going to go to format and going to fonts. So you press Command D or Control D if you're on a Windows computer, Command D if you're on a Mac. I have a couple options here. I'm going to select all caps. So any text that has the style I'm going to create will now be all caps. Now I don't want it to just be that. I actually want it to be indented a full inch. So I'm going to now go ahead and again click New Style, and we'll call that character name. And so I can click that here, and if we go to Azaria here, click on character name, aha, that's also indented a inch. Now, what happens if I decide that I want that to be centered instead of indented a inch? Well, for that, I just have to go here and click on Modify Style. And instead of doing the indent, I could go here to Format, for example. I can remove that indentation. And I can go here and say I want that to be centered and hit OK. And you see, oh, all those names are now centered. Now, one of the things that having it in some systems indented an inch or something more than the dialogue is that here, Josh, the name is all the way over there. And so you might be submitting to an opportunity where instead of centered, you want it to be indented just a bit more. And if we look at this example, okay, so what happened, Josh? So that's roughly centered, but we actually have this large right-hand margin for taking notes. And that's one of the reasons why Playscripts tend to have those very large margins, because they've historically been printed, and that's a place to write instructions and changes and things like that, as you can see here. So we're going to go back now to our document here, and we're going to tweak our document here. And so I've decided, all right, I'm going to change my page margins here. So we have that area. So I'm going to go to Layout, margins and go to customs margins. And so to give myself an extra amount of space for notes, we're going to change that to not the left margin. We want that to be the right margin. And so you can set it to a variety of values. We're going to set it to 3. And I have this set to apply to the whole document, so everything should be affected. And watch what happens when I hit OK. So our text has jumped over there. We have this large area here for making notes. And, I didn't even have to make any changes here to the dialogue. Now, there's some more, because if we added some additional lines, in fact, let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to type in a few more so you can see how things are working. So we have here the character name. So I will again apply that by clicking on the style character name. And we have the dialogue. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to modify the style. So when it says style for following paragraph, that means it will automatically create a new dialogue formatted thing afterwards. So here, we're going to do the same thing with the dialogue. And so after we have some dialogue, the default, the thing that will happen automatically, is it'll give me a new character name thing. I can always change that and apply a new style to it. But this means that when I hit enter, I'm automatically doing a new character name. And so here I just have to type Azaria. It's all automatically all caps. Now we have dialogue, my mother, back to character name. And then she doesn't like wine, I suppose. Now, if we go back and look at our script, you'll see that there are some other things that we don't have yet. We have these vertical spaces. And so that actually helps with the readability quite a lot. So we want to have those spaces, but I don't want to go and hit enter all the time. I've got a long script to write here. So let's go ahead and go back, and we're going to edit our styles again. Now the question is, where do we want the space to happen? Now the space in the example we're looking at, the space is after the dialogue. So that's great. We just go ahead and go to our dialogue and modify that style. And so we can go to paragraph and say, okay, after we want that to be one line version. So we're using 12-point font. So 12-point means an extra blank line. And now we can see, oh, that's happening automatically. So I'm going to add a couple more lines here. We can even go back and add some things before that. Now, I can't see quite all the dialogue here, but I think you'll get the idea that we have replicated the larger aspects of this formatting very quickly, and that I'm not having to go and apply these individual styles most of the time. We're just going ahead and having it automatically added. Now I can go ahead and remove this extra space because our styles are now adding that automatically. But what if I want to create one specifically for stage directions? Well, this is already looking the way I want it to, I think. So let's go ahead and make a new style based on that. So we have our selection, new style, and we'll call that stage directions. And we'll have after our stage directions, it'll go to character name because you normally have someone speak after that. Now we did a couple things earlier with the other styles, like have that 12-point space after. So we're going to do that here. And now that that's being done, we need to first apply this style here. So that's going to be our stage directions style. And so now this manual line break is no longer necessary. And so I can keep adding these. Now, there is one other thing, and it'll be more clear if I just add some more spaces up here. So you see here, Josh has been separated from the following dialogue. So this is what we call a widow and orphan situation. We don't want our widows and orphans to be separated. It just doesn't look great. And then you turn the page and you lose track of who's doing it. And so we can avoid that by looking at the styles here. So here is, I'm sorry, let me go back and repeat that. So I have added some spaces here. And you see we have the separation here. So Josh is the character name, and then the line of dialogue is on another page. We don't want that. That doesn't look great. This is what we call in the typesetting world a widow orphan situation. And it's sad if widows and orphans are separated. We want them to be together. Fortunately, there's a rule that we can turn on to make that happen automatically, because you could hit return there and that would fix it temporarily. But any changes up here that added more space might move that off. So better to have it fixed in the style. And so we're going to go ahead and modify the character name style. And so if we look at this, we can go to format and look at this and see, okay, what are the rules that are controlling this? We have widow orphan control, keep with next. So the character name will always stay with the line that follows if we have that selected. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And you can see Josh has jumped to the next page. And in fact, if I added another break here with Azaria, you can see that always stays together now. So that's a big time saver, especially if you have a long script, like a whole play. Like I've known friends who've spent hours and hours doing this manually and then had to go and change it again. But if you have that set in your styles, that will fix all those problems. All right, now let's say that we're looking at the assignment instructions now. So let's go back here and look at those instructions again. So, and we're moving, by the way, to the outline portion here, outline and drafting. So if we look here at what this is asking us to do, we have the 2 role play scenarios, and we're going to have a couple characters here. So using these styles here, and just to keep some of the visual formatting here for an example, we'll leave this up here. But we'll add our narrator. They'll say something. We'll have our character number 1. You can always use a find and replace to change their name later. They will say something. Character number 2. And then you can add more as needed. But let's say that we are taking an example from one of my favorite literary and television series, Game of Thrones. For those of you who don't know, I wrote a parody of this called Game of Thrones, the musical, that involved puppets and Sesame Street style take on the series. So in this case, we're going to name our narrator Grandmaster Pycelle. We're going to have our character here be Tyrion Lannister. We're going to have character number 2 be Cersei Lannister. And we're going to have Tywin Lannister as the 3rd character. Now, what they say doesn't matter as far as our setting up the formatting, because we now have our characters. You'll plug in the dialogue, you'll add the back and forth. But what we do know is that we're going to have a first scene. So we'll go ahead and add role play number 1. And, I've decided I'm going to create a style for this too. And this style is going to be centered, bolded, and we're also going to have it be in all caps. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to be all caps there. And I'm going to say new style, and we're going to call this scene title. So I'm going to apply that. And remember, when you're creating in this way, You should apply it after you've created it. And we'll also have somewhere down here, again, we'll apply the title, scene title. And in fact, I'm just going to go ahead and say that scene title should be followed by stage directions. So there'll be some orientation here. And here, we know we're also going to have an introduction, going to have our characters saying their things. And somewhere at the end, we're going to have Grandmaster Pycelle as our narrator saying things again. So we can paste that in there, knowing we're going to add things in the middle, but it's going to be finished with the closing narration. I understand that there's a issue with some of the screen sharing, so let me walk you through that part again. So we have our role play a style, sorry, the heading role play number 1, role play number 2, gone ahead and I created a new style called scene title. And I've set this up so that it's automatically followed by stage directions. It's automatically bolded. It's automatically in all caps. And if we look here, we're going to turn on widow orphan control again. We want it to stay with what happens after that. And we'll even have a page break before so that it will automatically start on a new page. So now roleplay number 2 will start on its own page. And so, although there's a lot that hasn't been written yet, if we go look at the instructions, we see that roleplay number 1 needs to be introduced by something. In this case, we're assigning it to our narrator or Grandmaster Pycelle. And then the second role play should be followed up by a discussion about how the family members improved their initial communication strategies. And so in this case, it's being delivered by Grandmaster Pycelle. So looking at that, we have the basic setup, and you could keep copy and pasting this and deleting lines as turns out a character is not weighing in. But, we can put in some text here if we want. But that's up to your creativity. You can populate this with your own characters. If you choose a fictional world, lay out the ones you have, make sure they all say things, figure out their personalities or the parts that you want to be presenting in conflict. And again, this will be the encapsulating what is said. And so we can have here as a placeholder, just say, okay, wrap up your second presentation. So we know that's supposed to happen there. We can also go here and say, okay, we're going to have Grandmaster Pycelle up here identify this information here. And so we know that's going to go there, and then you can replace it and then delete this placeholder. And so let's say we're doing the introduction part. And then you would introduce the other things that are happening. And as you have added those, just cross them off until they're all crossed off, and you can delete this placeholder. And there we have it. We have, to recap, we have discussed how to create styles, how to use styles, how to set styles to automatically generate the things we want, to follow them to save us on time, and even to have a new scene automatically start on a new page. So that's how to format a script. If you want to change your margins of the page, just go to Layout, Margins, and set them to whatever it is that you want. In this case, we left a wide margin to give notes. You don't need to have that. You can also choose to center this rather than indent it. That is up to you. But these will carry over in this document. And if you want to have them for new documents that you create, well, let's talk about that. If you go to Format, Style, you have this menu here, and Collect Organizer. You can copy any styles you want from the document you have open. In this case, could be taking our character name style, for example, and our scene title style, and stage directions, and copy those into our template. So those are always available to you as options. If you copy it into normal.dotm, that'll be available in any new document that you create. So hope that's helpful. And let's just wrap this up by saying, if you have any writing task, whether related to a play script or not, you're welcome to contact the Online Writing Center for assistance. We have appointments available every day out of the week. You can make up to 2 1-hour appointments per week. Those can be real-time appointments, or they can be Zoom appointments, and where you're talking with us in real time, or they can be email appointments where you sign up for time, you upload your paper, and we send you feedback within 24 hours of that appointment time. So you're welcome to send us a question at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to schedule an appointment or check out the resources on our website. And with that, I bid you good night.